I was speaking. It's your own fault. You have no excuse that you came. For those of you who didn't know that I was speaking today, I apologize in advance for anything I may say. I'm excited to be here. My name's Larry Morgan. I'm the administrative pastor here, and literally I'm excited not only to be here to speak, but to hear what I'm going to say, because a lot of times I don't even know sometimes until after I've said it. So typically I can find the line because I've crossed it a while ago. It's usually behind me, so if I say anything that's inappropriate, again, I will apologize for it, but it's kind of pastor's fault because he knows me and he knows that he's heard me speak before. So if you haven't, it's probably been a year or so because it takes about that long for people to get over it. And so, I need to brag a little bit today, brag on some family members and on myself as well. Which you'll find that I rarely do I brag about myself. So I want to go ahead and apologize. Thank the people that are online. Hopefully you're still watching once you realized it was me that was going to be teaching today. But I apologize for walking around, and to the people that are in the room too, because you could get seasick. So just if you'll pick a spot, I'll be back. I'll walk through that spot at some point. If you'll just focus on a spot, I promise. So anyway, what I'm bragging about, how much time do I have? I have a little bit more time than I had first service, so I'll slow down. So what I'm going to brag about today, in addition to me, is my nephews. I have two nephews. They are, my sister and her husband have two boys, and the oldest is a senior at Porter Ridge High School, which is in Union County, North Carolina. I think Mint Hill, Matthews area. I'm not sure if you know where that is, but he's a senior. He was just recently selected to be one of the captains of the football team and actually has been referred to in some publications and some news broadcasts in that area that he's one of the top or the top defensive back in the county. So that's awesome. Last year, he led the state in interceptions for a while. I know he was tied in Union County for the most interceptions. So that's really cool. And then his brother, my youngest nephew, is 16. He's a sophomore at Porter Ridge, and I found out last week that he got moved up from the JV football team to the varsity football team, which now means that I don't have to drive all that way on Thursday night and Friday night. I can just go on Friday and see them both play and get credit for it. So they're great. They're great kids. They're good-looking kids. They're excellent athletes. They play baseball as well as football and basketball too, and they're excellent scholars. And I'm not sure, but my understanding is that most times that's hereditary through the mother's brother, I think is where typically that typically comes from. So I'll brag on them a little bit. They texted me yesterday and said, Jake, the oldest one, said, Uncle Larry, we have an extra ticket to the final round of the PGA Championship, golf championship that's going on today. And we would love for you to go with us. Now, the reason that I'm proud of myself is because it went through my mind to call Kenny and tell him I didn't think I was going to be feeling well this morning and that he needed to go ahead and prepare to speak to you something of the utmost importance today in my absence because I felt a cough coming on. But I was proud I did not do that. And I am positive that they did not know that I could not go when they asked me. Because you know how sometimes don't act like you've never done this. You know good and well somebody can't go to something, but you want to get credit for asking them anyway, right? Come on. You've called somebody at their house knowing you're sitting outside their house waiting for them to leave, and then you call them at home so you can leave a message, but you don't have to talk to them. Am I the only person that's never done that? That's why I'm proud of my nephews and of me for being here today with you. You know what? It's not even about the golf. The golf's great. It's fun. But what I would have liked to have done was to spend some time with them. Because an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old wants to hang out with their 47-year-old gray-haired uncle. It's pretty cool. But I'll get another opportunity. I'm sure the Lord will give me another window of opportunity. You see what I did there? I just transitioned. Speaking of windows of opportunity, we've been talking about, it's a segue. It's not just a thing you ride on and fall off of, right? Anyway, we have been talking about windows of opportunity. We've been talking for 3 weeks now about windows of opportunity and the way that we can make the most of the chances and the ability that we have to reach out to people. People are extremely important. People are God's most prized possession. What we've been talking about in this series, the first week that we talked about was the bridge was the title of the first message, and Pastor was talking specifically about a certain age group of people, young adults, 18 to mid-20s or something like that, and about how important it is. All age groups are important, but how that's a crucial area and something that we've seen here at New Hope that we need to put some focus into again. But generally, what he was talking about is that we need to lift our eyes up and off of ourselves and quit looking in the mirror. I find it extremely difficult to walk by a mirror. Anybody here with me? I can't walk by a mirror without slowing down and saying, good Lord, that's a good-looking picture. I don't remember when the Lord has spent so much time on one person. Anyway, we need to stop doing that, right? We need to get our eyes off of ourselves and look at other people. So we were specifically talking about that age group, but generally we're talking about ministering to other people and seeing other people. The next week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the path, and that's how we go about ministering to other people. And we talked about several things, several ways that New Hope is dedicated to and wants to be about discipleship, because we want to be about discipleship. We don't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep, because you don't have any roots when you're that way. So we want to teach people and we want to disciple people. We want people, there are a couple things that New Hope wants to help people do, and they all start with the letter B. We want to help people believe in Jesus Christ. We want to help people belong to a family. We want to help people become disciples. And we want to help people build the kingdom. So those are some things that we as a church, and that I believe you as individuals and families want to help people do also. Would you agree with that? And there's some things that we want to see happening at New Hope and see in the lives of our families, in our neighborhoods, and our communities. And they all start with the letter S. And that's, we want people to be saved. We want people to be spirit-filled. We want people to be set free from all types of bondages. We want people to be serving. We want to give people opportunities to serve. And we want people to be sent. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to leave this place and move to another place or plant a church. It might mean that, but it means daily and weekly, particularly weekly, coming here, we gather together here, and then we leave this place. We want you to be sent to your schools, to your places of employment, your businesses, to the market, to anywhere that you see other people. We want you to be sent so you can give people hope. Here at New Hope, we give people hope. So what we're going to talk today is the common denominator, really, of all those things. What is the common denominator? I gave first service the answer. What's the common denominator? If we're talking about we want to get our eyes off of ourselves and look at other people, and we want people to be discipled, and then I didn't even talk about the third week. The third week we talked about prayer, the portal, prayer. And we talked about specifically about praying for other people. But again, people. So people is the common denominator of what we've been talking about. We want to talk about today, I want to finish the series today to talk about pillars. And pillars are something that hold up the structure, that connect the structure to the foundation. Now, when Pastor and I talked about pillars, the first thing that came through my mind was, I have a memory foam pillar, and it is, oh my gosh, I love. And then the other one was, I hate those little pillars that they give you on the airplanes. You know, y'all were thinking about something else on the airplanes that are little, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the little pillars on airplanes that you get. So anyway, okay, note to self. I wish there was a third service because I would have another shot at this. I guess it doesn't matter that I write down, don't do this joke, because I've already cut a couple things that I said in first service. Pillars. You've seen pillars, right? You know what I'm talking about, like the Colosseums and the Parthenon and really fancy houses like a lot of y'all have in the front, like Like columns or pillars. You know what I'm talking about, right? Anybody in construction understand what I'm talking about? There's a verse that we actually read it already. It's our verse of the week, found in Matthew 22, and I'm going to read it again. There were some religious leaders of the day that wanted to try to trip up Jesus or trick him or get him to speak in error. And so they said, basically they asked him, which is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said to him, the person that was asking, you should love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So if you've ever seen a bridge, you've crossed a bridge, you've ever seen the Golden Gate Bridge or pictures of it or about any suspension bridge, you're going to see two, for the most part, you're going to see two towers or columns, or in our case, we're going to call them pillars, that cables are connected to. You get in the picture as I'm drawing it here. If there's land here and the span that you're going to bridge across, there's cables connected on either side of the opening, right? And then they go up to these pillars, and then they connect. You follow me, right? So I get that picture. I heard somebody do a teaching on that one time, but I get that picture in my mind about these two commandments, these two things that the Lord says, everything else hangs on these things. One of those towers or pillars is love God. The other is to love people. So in our case, in what I want to talk about today are the things that hold up what we do. So you can use the bridge example, or you could use the example of a pillar that's holding up a structure, that's connecting the foundation of that structure, the footing, to the structure. It's what supports the weight. Now, whether you know it or not, we've all got pillars or columns or something in our homes that's supporting the weight of it. Now, you don't always see them, but they're there. Now, there are some things in New Hope that we can talk about that you know are pillars or values that we have. We have a lot of them on the back wall of the sanctuary. We have several that we know by heart. So if I said this, finish these sentences for me. At New Hope, we believe in word, worship, and prayer. Good, very good. Y'all listen. So we say that a lot, right? At New Hope, we give people awesome. How smart are y'all? Pastor Larry is see? Golly, y'all. Oh, my Lord, y'all are good. Awesome was what I had written down. And handsome. Oh, awesome is right. Handsome. Somebody said brilliant, I think. No, seriously, these are certain phrases that we know. Whether you know them about me or not, I know them, and I know them to be true. These are certain things that we either have up on the wall or in your families, not just here at New Hope, but things that you guys are, values that you have, pillars that support who you are, and they connect who you are to God, to the foundation. I was telling you a little bit earlier about my nephews. When they were young, they would say, yes, sir, and they still do. Yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. And I remember correcting the oldest one. He was probably 4 or 5. And I said, you can call me Uncle Larry. You don't have to say yes, sir, or no, sir. My sister corrected him, or corrected me, and she said, oh, yes, he does. What do you think, what value do you think they were instilling in their boys at that young of an age? Respect for people, right? Respect for people. And it wasn't about the words that they were saying. It was about this attitude and this mindset and this position of respect. Even if it's not plastered on a wall somewhere, or if it's not something that's super visible, we all have pillars in our homes. We all have pillars in our lives. Sometimes they're encased in a wall. They're supports that you can't see. Otherwise, if you didn't have any pillars or columns in your home, then you got to start to think, how's the roof staying up? We have a brick home, and underneath, you ever been crawling in the crawl space underneath your house? Ugh, it's bad under there, right? So spiders and stuff under there. So But in our home, we have these brick, I don't know, they're about that tall, and they run from the ground to the bottom of the joist, and that's what the joists are sitting on. Obviously, they're connected to the band outside the house or around the house, but they're sitting on those piers or pillars. They're connected to the foundation, connected to something, the base, and they're supporting the home. So we all have them, even if we don't know them. So there are things we talked about already. We want people to believe and belong and become and build. Those are things that we also look at we want people to be saved and spirit-filled and set free and serving and sent. Those are some things that we use to test what we do here at New Hope. So is an event or a plan or a program, is it going to help us do those things? If it is, then it's on the table. If it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. But it might be sideways energy that this is where we're supposed to run. This is what we're supposed to do. So now we can't do everything, obviously. And there are some things that obviously meet those standards, but we might not be able to do them here. Just like you don't have time or the resources to do everything that might be a good thing. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll identify something. For example, years ago, we had a food pantry here. And it was a fantastic ministry. It really did bless people. But times change. Volunteers transition into another ministry or they move. So we changed the plan. We don't have a food pantry here anymore. Now, does that mean that we don't care if people eat or not? Absolutely not. What we have done instead is we direct people to Cooperative Christian Ministries. We give money to Cooperative Christian Ministries. We support entities and agencies that can do what we were trying to do. They can do it even better than we were. We don't build houses here at New Hope Worship Center, but we support Habitat for Humanity, and we partner with them a lot of times because that's their lane. That's what they run in. So we have values and we have pillars that help to direct what we do. So if we're able to support something, if we're able to do something, then it's on the table. For example, even since Christmas this past year, there have been several local agencies that we have supported. CVAN was one of them. The Gate Pregnancy Center. Foursquare Missions, we've had a monthly focus, and we'll continue to have others in the next several months, where we're ministering to and we're supporting other agencies that are doing things that they can do more effectively than we're able to do it. Why do we do some of these things? Because of the first pillar I want to talk about at New Hope is generosity, is that we believe that God blesses us so that we can bless others. Generosity is what encouraged us and drove us to help these agencies, to do things like giving money. Now, some might say that God blesses us because we give to others, and it's kind of cyclical. I believe that God blesses us so that we can give to others, and he blesses us because we can give to others. There's a scripture found in Luke 6:38, and I'll read it. It says, "Give, and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, it will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use it, it will be given back to you." New Hope is generous, and New Hopians, that you are generous people, I have no doubt. I know I talk a lot about tithing, and I know that if Kenny and Krista, if they say one more time that we don't want visitors to feel obligated to give in the offering, if I hear that one more time, I'm going to scream. We're not going to talk about tithing today, and let me tell you why. Because tithing, hear me, tithing is not being generous. Tithing is being obedient, right? So we're not even going to talk about tithing other than what I've already said about it. Tithing is the base. That's where you got to start. After the tithe, then you're starting to be generous when you give after the tithe. And it's not just about money. It is about money, but it's not just about money. Generosity is giving whatever, whenever is needed. Generosity is giving your time and giving your talent and giving your treasure too. Generosity is something that you need in life so that God can add to you. If you say, well, I don't have time or I don't have the money to do this, I promise you, if you'll find a way to be generous, then God will add those things to you. Generosity is a spirit. Generosity is a mode. Does that make sense? Generosity is a value. Generosity is not just an action. Generosity is a mindset. Okay? Generosity will permeate everything you do. It's a value. It's a pillar in the life of New Hope Worship Center, and I'm sure in your life, that generosity is a value that drives what you do. Generosity will mess you up. It'll mess the devil up too, because he gets scared. He's like, what have they done? What are these people thinking about? Generosity will mess you up so bad it'll make you feed cats. So, are you cat people? Cat people in the house? Sorry. You know what? Actually, I have at the top of this piece of paper, no cat jokes. Because that's one of the things that I learned in the last service not to say, but I figured I would risk it again. No, it'll make you compassionate for lesser beings, right? Cats may be smart. Am I digging the hole deeper, right? Cats may be smarter than me, but they don't act it sometimes. It'll make you do these crazy things like feeding cats and giving people stuff, and it'll make you feel stupid. Now, it doesn't make you feel stupid, but the devil will make you feel stupid when you give a car away to somebody because the Lord told you to give a car, and then the next little whisper you hear in your ear is, that was dumb. You'll never see anything from that. That's what generosity will do. It'll mess you up. It's what makes people drive 40 minutes to volunteer for Vacation Bible School this past week. It's what possesses people to get here on the first Saturday of the month and cook at 6 a.m. for the men's breakfast, right? That's what generosity will do. It'll make you do crazy stuff. It's what prompted not New Hope, because the council didn't make a decision to do this, the staff didn't make the decision to do this. You gave over $3,000 in January to a church in Kannapolis that there was a fire. That's what generosity does. Generosity is what compels you to pray for the person. Again, it's not just about money. Generosity is what compels you to pray for the person that's coughing in the grocery store behind you. That you want them to be healed because you don't want them to get you sick. But it's generous. You're being generous nonetheless, right? Generosity is what allows us to give people hope every day and everywhere. But you know what? Generosity does not start when you see a need. That's when it becomes evident. Generosity starts today when you pre-decide. Have you ever heard the term predestined or predestination? We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about pre-deciding today. There is such a phrase. I don't know if I made it up or not, but I pre-decide today that I'm going to be generous going forward, right? You know what that does? When you're presented with an opportunity to bless someone or presented with a need, it takes all the stress out of the decision of whether or not to give or whether or not to let somebody borrow your truck or let somebody use something or to, it just takes those things away. Now, you might still have to wrestle with or decide how much or for how long they can borrow your truck or, whatever, your kids or whatever. But you've already decided, you pre-decided, you made the decision to be generous. So it's a mindset. It's something I decide now going forward. I'm going to be generous no matter what. And you know what? The Lord will take you up on those things. So be careful, because if you say, Lord, help me be generous, He will give you opportunities to be generous. That's like praying for patience. You got to be careful what you pray for, because there's only one way to get patience or to display patience, and that's go through junk that makes you have patience, right? Lord, please help my tongue. Help me control my tongue. Well, guess what you're getting ready to get into? An opportunity to control your tongue. So just be careful. I used to think, speaking of generosity, I used to think that we decided here at the church that we're going to help everybody. Now, doesn't mean that all y'all call me tomorrow and say, hey, Pastor Larry, you remember what you were saying yesterday about helping everyone? We do. We help everybody with something. Now, that means that we can't help everybody with something huge, but we can help everybody with something. So if somebody calls and needs help with a power bill or rent or something like that, we help. We don't help every time they call, because we have people that call every week, right? Not that he calls every week, but sorry, I didn't mean that to sound like that. No, but because a lot of times he might get a phone call and he'll say, so-and-so called again. And I'm like, it's Monday, of course they did, or Friday or whatever. So, but we help with everybody that. So when we decided to do that, then all of a sudden there's this deluge of people calling, needing help. And I thought, oh my Lord. And then I realized, you know what? That's not a curse. That's actually a blessing. The Lord heard what we said we were going to do, and he started giving us opportunities to do it, to walk in it. We pre-decided to be generous, and he's blessing us, bringing people to us that we can help financially and help in other ways. And you know what? He knows he can trust us. So he says, I'm going to pour seed here because I know they're not going to use it to make bread. They're going to plant it, right? So we pre-decided, and I know that you have too, or if you haven't, you will by the time we're done today. Pre-decide to be generous because that's something that informs all of our decisions here at New Hope. A second major value or pillar that supports any effective ministry, and it's no less important here, is unity. We believe that we can accomplish anything and everything by the power of Jesus Christ when we walk in unity. Romans 12, 14 through 18 says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it's possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. So what we have decided to do here at New Hope, and hopefully in your lives, in your individual families, I'm sure that you've decided these things too. We're going to live in unity. We're going to walk in unity. Let me tell you a little bit about unity. Unity is marvelous. It's miraculous. It's fantastic. It's so positive and so uplifting. It's so godly. And it's so impossible to maintain if there's any more than one person involved in any sort of conversation. Right? I've been in meetings with 4 people and there have been 7 opinions. And most of the time, those are because I have 3. If I had 3 hands, I'd have 3 opinions because I say on one hand, blah, 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 but on the other hand, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times those things are opposite. So why is unity so elusive when we have a common goal? Well, it's mainly because we all have a brain and we have the capacity for rational thought. We have egos, we have feelings, we have experiences that we draw on when we try to make decisions or have conversations with people. We have wisdom and we have egos, and we have opinions and we have egos, and we have self-esteem issues sometimes and egos. And for those of you who might not know, I have a little bit of a self-esteem issue. High self-esteem is an issue still. I have an overblown sense of self-worth. It stems from my parents who instilled in me, rightly so, at a young age, that I could do anything, and I had the audacity to believe them that I could. So, so I apologize for that. But in my experiences, I haven't been able to walk in unity with people, with everybody, without making a decision, pre-deciding that I'm going to walk in unity. Because it's something that's really hard to do in the moment when our emotions, we went from calm to, oh, good Lord, please help me. There's only 2 ways. I'm sure that you guys have heard this before. There's only 2 ways. I know pastors said this before. There's only 2 ways for people to walk in unity. And that's agreement. That's the easy way, right? It's super easy when we all agree on the same thing and we're walking in unity. But the other way is submission. So what happens when we are no longer in agreement? My lovely wife, Julie, we never have to approach this, do we? Dear, we're always in agreement. We're always in unity. Yep. Until one of us is not, right? Until we come to like a crossroads where one says, this is the way I think we should go, and the other says, this is the way I think we should go. Somebody's got to make a decision for us to. Now, we could go our separate ways, and you're not walking in unity. If you've decided on unity, there's only two ways: be in agreement, or somebody's got to submit. And I submit well. You should. It's amazing how well I can submit. If you ever get the chance to tell your spouse to submit, don't, because I did one time and you will not like it. Two ways: agreement, submission. Now, you could compromise, and sometimes compromise is good. Sometimes it's necessary. But if there's a spot on a map that you've got to get to, and somebody says, this is the way we've got to go to get there, and somebody else says, no, this is the way we've got to go to get there, and you compromise, if the spot on the map that you got to get to is here, and your compromise is taking you here, so compromise, sometimes they work and sometimes they're good, but when there's somewhere that you've got to get to, you've got to be in unity or agreement or submission. So if unity is so hard to achieve, then how do we do it? Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. Number one, to have unity, we've got to seek God's will. How do you seek God's will? You got to, what is it? Did I even tell you how to do it? It's in my notes. I didn't think I put it on the thing. Yeah, we got to pray. You have to read the word. You have to know God's voice. And the only way to know God's voice is to know his character and to be in relationship with him. So you've got to know God's character. You've got to read his word. You've got to pray to hear his will so that you can truly be in unity in your families. So we're talking about New Hope principles and values, but this is like life stuff that we can actually take and use when we leave here, because how many people know that life happens outside these however many four walls, right? So you've got to seek God's will, pray, read the word, know his character. Number two, you have to prefer others to yourself. That's the hard one. So I have to prefer you over me. And I have to decide, again, we're pre-deciding that we're going to walk in unity. We can disagree on something, but at the end of the day, unity is the goal. Unity is what we will walk out of this place in unity. And then the third is pre-deciding to submit. You have to decide now that you're going to live peaceably with everyone, is what the word says, as much as it depends on you. Decide now that if someone doesn't agree with you, that you'd rather walk in unity than have your way, right? Decide now that you trust God enough to work it out if it's a poor decision. If somebody that you submit to makes a poor decision and you submitted because you've agreed to walk in unity and it's a poor decision, we have to trust that God's going to take care of that. God's got that. Anybody have a boss that might make a poor decision from time to time? I don't. Mine's awesome. Just in case, Pastor Dale, just in case you're listening. But I have had them before that I didn't agree with their decisions. But I trusted God enough to know that I'm under the umbrella or under the anointing of the Lord, and that a decision that I didn't agree with, but I submitted to, that God can take care of all that. God can cover all of that. We have to decide that no matter the situation, we're going to strive to walk in unity. Now, at New Hope, we're not going to agree that everybody, or that we're not going to all agree that we should do a particular ministry or maybe sing a song or wear a certain color of shirt. Obviously, those are some petty things. But we're not going to agree on everything in every situation, but we can decide that we walk in unity. It's the same thing at home. If you pre-decide to walk in unity, then emotions don't get to rule the day. How many people know people who are ruled by their emotions? How many people are people sometimes? We all are sometimes, that our emotions might get the best of us. And anger and depression or despair or whatever kind of rules how we think and how we feel and how we act and how we interact, particularly with other people. You know people that have no governor. There's no filter between their heart and their mouth, right? I know people like that. A lot of times those people are struggling with the pre-decision to walk in unity. So the last pillar that I want to talk about today is faith. And that's another thing that we can pre-decide to walk in. We walk by faith in every aspect of our life. I'm going to read Matthew 21, verse 18 through 22. Now in the morning, as he returned to the city, this is Jesus coming back to the city, he was hungry, and seeing a fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it but leaves, and said to it, "Let no fruit grow on you ever again." And immediately the fig tree withered. Now when the disciples saw this, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither away so soon?" So Jesus answered and said to them, "Assuredly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but also if you say to this mountain, 'Be removed and be cast into the sea,' it will be done. And whatever things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive." Now, I don't know if Jesus meant literally that you could curse a fig tree. I've never tried to curse a fig tree. Actually, I think I did. My mother-in-law has one in her yard, and I mow her yard sometimes, and they get ants on them all the time, and so I probably have cursed a fig tree. And you know what? It has broken. There have been branches broken off of it several times now in the past. It might work. I might curse that this week when I mow. I may curse that tree. Anyway, what were we talking about? We were talking about whether or not literally will this mountain be cast into the sea. I don't know. But I think what the point that he was making, possibly, I think the point that he was making was whatever you need, whatever you say, can happen. Whatever you believe, the Lord can do whatever you need in your life. When you pre-decide to walk in faith and be a person of faith, then you don't have to struggle and don't have to worry about your emotions ruling the day or going back and forth. There was a kid, a family used to come to church here. They told me a story about their son. I don't know how old he was, 6 or 7 or something. They saw him dragging out like a gas can and then dragging out like a hose pipe. In the South, that's what we call it. It's a garden hose, I guess, to people that aren't from here. Dragging his hose pipe, and the mom ran out there and said, or he came back through and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm going to, like in the Bible where they made an altar and then they wet it and they called down fire from heaven, I'm going to go ahead and do that." And he honestly was prepared for the Lord to, the faith of a kid, right? He had faith that it was, and it probably would have, knowing this family, it probably would have happened. But we've talked a lot about pre-deciding things today. We've talked about pre-deciding to be generous. We've talked about pre-deciding to pursue unity no matter what. And we can pre-decide to be a people of faith. Now, our concept of faith has got to be a little bit deeper than just our relationship with the Lord, because we're saved by grace through faith. We have faith in Jesus Christ, and because of that, the grace of God, we're saved. But that doesn't really help you. Forgive me, Lord, if this is wrong, but that doesn't really help you a lot when the bill's here and I've got to pay. If you write, "I'm saved by grace, I'm going to heaven, I know Jesus, I love Jesus," if you write that on the remittance form and send it in, you're going to feel maybe a little bit better until they call you and say, "I'm so glad you're saved and going to see Jesus, but we need our money." So how does that concept of faith, if that's our only concept that we have of faith, then how do we survive? How do we go on when our concept of faith, or when everything around us is falling apart, when relationships and finances and health, what supports us and connects us to our foundation? What pillars do we have in our life that's going to hold up the structure when everyone else on the job site, when they're falling apart? What do we have? What do you have in your life? Thank you, Mike. What do you have in your life that's different from what everybody else has? My concept of faith has got to include a level of trust in God. We talked about trust a minute ago. but a level of trust in God that really doesn't make sense to the world. Faith and belief that God sent his son Jesus to die for my sins so I can be reconnected with him is just the beginning of faith that we need in our daily life. We have to understand that we're not going to understand everything and that things are not going to make sense, but we trust God and we can handle anything when we pre-decide to have faith. The overcoming type of faith, the faith that's rooted, the faith that's unwavering, is always pre-decided. Rarely can you have that kind of faith if you haven't decided before that you're going to walk in faith. Faith will sustain you when the well runs dry. That's a faith that's been established well beforehand. What if the building gets flooded? We had this here. We've had water in the front before. Well, we had faith that God was going to provide people with shop vacs and we were going to get it cleaned up, but also that God was going to provide us the wisdom how to reroute the water to where it doesn't come in here, right? So what happens if you lose your job or something happens and you're without a job? Well, a pre-decided faith, walking in faith and being firmly rooted in faith says, well, I know God's going to provide in the interim, but he's also going to provide another job. So we don't cover our heads up and just say, oh, God's going to provide the money. He may, but more than likely he's going to provide a job. So you can, the word even says he gives us the ability to build wealth. That's what the word says. Not that he doesn't give us wealth. He gives us the ability to build it. And maybe he provides you with 2 jobs for a season. But a pre-decided faith is not, it's not that you don't care. It's not that you're not concerned, but you're not rocked. Your world has not ended because certain things happen when you have faith as a value or a pillar in your life. So, New Hope is a place of faith. We aren't tossed back and forth because of trends or winds or waves. We raise up leaders. You, the younger ones that are in here, the ones that are in the Next Gen building. We raise up leaders that are firmly rooted. That's one of the values that establishes what we do and why we do, so that we can help people be firmly rooted in their faith, so that when their classmates or when your co-workers, 2 things, when there's an assault on your faith or an assault on you, you can stand firm. But the other thing is when they have questions and come to you and say, there's something different about you. I don't know what it is, but you have peace in this situation where everything is going crazy, and I need that in my life. Those are values that we have here at New Hope. Generosity drives what we do. Unity drives what we do. And faith drives what we do, because we understand that people are the goal. Not just us, but the people that we come into contact with when we leave this place. And it's not about people coming here and being saved here necessarily. It's about us going to the people, going to the world, and changing lives. You agree with that? So with generosity and in unity and by faith, we can effectively reach and minister to people. And then we can honestly say that we give people hope. Would you stand with me? We'll pray. Father, thank you for the opportunity that you've given us today to hear your word. Thank you for making us a generous people, not only as a church, but individuals. Thank you, Lord, that you bring us opportunities to be generous, not only with finances, but with time and with our talents, Father, in every aspect of our life. And help us see when you bring people to us, help us see that as an opportunity to be generous and live generous lives. Father, thank you for the unity that we walk in, not only here at New Hope, but in our families. Lord, thank you that you are restoring relationships, establishing relationships, that you are the repairer of the breach. Thank you for that, Lord. Thank you that you have given us the measure of faith that we need to sustain us in this life, Father. And that when we need more faith, you give us that as well. And when we pre-decide to be people of faith, that when the winds come and when the rains come or when the rains don't come, we're not swayed or we're not devastated by any of those things. And we're not ruled by our emotion, because we've already decided that we're going to be a generous people, we're going to be a people in unity, and we're going to be a people of faith, and nothing the enemy brings against us can change that, Father. And if there's anybody in this room with your heads bowed and eyes still closed, if you would, if there's anybody in here that might not have a relationship with Jesus Christ, or maybe you had a relationship with Christ and it's not exactly where you want it to be, you feel like you've grown distant, I'm just going to ask you, just not to embarrass you, just to raise your hand. I think it's a step that we have to take. Father, thank you that our relationship with you can be as easy as coming back to you, as easy as saying, Father, forgive me and cleanse me, and I want to have a relationship, a renewed relationship with you. Lord, thank you for making me generous. Thank you for helping me walk in unity, and thank you for giving me faith. In your name we pray. Amen.